The body was discovered at precisely 5:17 p.m. Housemaid Fatima Patel found Amihan Reyes sprawled across the imported Italian marble of her private bathroom floor. One arm stretched toward her phone on the counter, fingers frozen in a final, desperate reach. The teacup lay shattered beside her, amber liquid seeping into the grout between pristine tiles that cost more than Amihan would have earned in a month back in Manila. "Miss Amihan? Miss Amihan!" Fatima's screams echoed through the east wing of the Palm Jumeirah mansion, bouncing off vaulted ceilings and marble columns, past priceless artwork that Amihan had once marveled at, back when she believed she'd found salvation in this glittering palace by the sea. By the time Sheikh Falah Al-Zabi arrived, still on a conference call about shipping container regulations in Singapore, household staff had gathered in horrified silence at the doorway. He ended his call immediately, barking orders for someone to call an ambulance, though everyone present recognized the futility. The woman who had brought warmth back to his broken home lay motionless, her usually animated face frozen in an expression of confused betrayal. His younger brother Ghanim appeared moments later, his Oxford-educated composure slipping just slightly as he surveyed the scene. "The children," he said quietly. "Someone needs to keep them away from here." 4-year-old Layla's plaintive voice carried down the hallway. "I want Ami. Where's Ami?" But Amihan Reyes would never again gather little Layla into her arms, never help Kareem with his reading difficulties, never guide Zara through the complexities of early adolescence. The woman who had become the emotional center of the Al-Zabi household was gone. Another invisible casualty in a city built on invisible labor. 18 months earlier, Amihan had stood in Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport, clutching her newly issued passport and employment visa. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of a woman accustomed to responsibility. Her simple cotton dress and sensible shoes contrasted sharply with the designer labels surrounding her in the international terminal. "Anik, you must be careful," her mother had whispered during their goodbye, pressing a small wooden rosary into her palm. "We hear stories about these rich Arab families." "I'll be fine, Mama," Amihan had assured her, though her own stomach churned with anxiety. The agency vetted them thoroughly. The Sheikh is a businessman with 3 children who need care since their mother died. The salary is triple what I make teaching, and there's a contract. What she didn't say was how desperately they needed the money. Her father's Parkinson's medications consumed half her teaching salary, while her younger sister Maricel's medical school tuition consumed the other half. When the opportunity appeared through International Caregiver Placement Agency, a position with the Al-Zabi family in Dubai, it had seemed like divine intervention. "Miss Reyes," a man in a crisp uniform approached, holding a sign with her name. "I am Hassan, driver for Al-Zabi family. I will escort you to Dubai." The Emirates first-class ticket, something she would never have afforded on her teacher's salary, was her first glimpse into the world she was entering. As the plane lifted off from Manila, carrying her away from the cramped 3-room apartment where she'd grown up in Tonda, Amihan closed her eyes and prayed she was making the right choice. Her former principal had warned her just yesterday, "You have a gift with children, Amihan. Your students will miss you terribly. And these Gulf countries, they don't always respect Filipino workers." "It's only for 2 years," she had replied. "Then I'll have enough saved to come back, help my family, and maybe even open my own small school someday." The memory of her 4th-grade classroom, with its peeling paint and enthusiastic students, brought tears to her eyes as the plane climbed above Manila's sprawling cityscape. She brushed them away quickly. She couldn't afford sentimentality now. This was about survival. The drive from Dubai International Airport to Palm Jumeirah revealed a city of impossible contradictions. Gleaming skyscrapers rose from desert sands like mirages, their glass facades reflecting a sun so relentless it seemed to bend the air itself. Workers from South Asia labored in the blistering heat, constructing ever more monuments to wealth while living in crowded labor camps on the city's outskirts. "That is Burj Khalifa," Hassan pointed out as they passed the world's tallest building. "And there Sheikh Zayed Road. Many big companies." Amihan nodded, trying to take it all in. Manila had skyscrapers too, but nothing like this. A city seemingly created overnight, fueled by oil money and ambition, where everything was possible if you could afford it. As they crossed onto Palm Jumeirah, the man-made island shaped like a palm tree extending into the Persian Gulf, Hassan explained, "This is most exclusive address in Dubai. Each villa costs many millions." The Al-Zabi compound appeared behind large security gates, a sprawling white mansion with architectural elements that blended modern design with traditional Arabic aesthetics. Fountains flanked the circular driveway, and manicured gardens stretched in every direction despite the desert climate. A display of wealth in a region where water itself was luxury. "You are not just nanny," Hassan informed her as they approached. "Sheikh Falah employs full-staff housekeepers, cooks, gardeners, security. You are responsible only for children's care and education at home." When the car stopped at the entrance, Amihan steeled herself, smoothing her travel-wrinkled clothes. The double doors opened before Hassan could ring the bell, revealing an elegant Filipina woman in her 50s. "Welcome, I am Al-Zabi, house manager," she said in Tagalog, her expression professionally neutral. "Come, you must be exhausted. I'll show you your quarters first before you meet the family." The interior of the mansion was even more opulent than Amihan had imagined. Soaring ceilings adorned with intricate geometric patterns, chandeliers dripping with crystal, furniture that looked too expensive to use. She followed Al-Zabi through corridors lined with artwork, trying not to gape. "Most staff share rooms in the service wing," Al-Zabi explained. "But as the children's nanny, you have private accommodations near their rooms. Sheikh Falah believes the children's caregiver should have proper quarters." The room, larger than her entire apartment in Manila, featured a queen-sized bed, private bathroom with marble fixtures, desk, wardrobe, and even a small sitting area. French doors opened onto a small private balcony overlooking a swimming pool. "This is for me?" Amihan whispered, unable to hide her shock. "The children's previous nanny was British," Al-Zabi explained, a hint of something unspoken in her tone. "These were her quarters. She left suddenly after Madame Catherine's accident." Before Amihan could ask questions, Al-Zabi continued, "Rest for an hour, freshen up. The children will be home from school soon, and Sheikh Falah wishes to meet you before dinner." Sheikh Falah bin Khalid Al-Zabi was not what Amihan had expected. In his mid-40s, he possessed the quiet authority of someone accustomed to power but none of the arrogance she had braced herself for. Dressed in a simple white kandura, he greeted her in his study, a room lined with books in multiple languages. "Miss Reyes, welcome to our home," he said, his English precise with just a hint of Arabic accent. "Your credentials are impressive. I understand you taught elementary school in Manila?" "Yes, sir. 4th grade for 7 years," Amihan replied, trying not to fidget. "I specialized in literature and mathematics." "Perfect. My son Kareem struggles with reading. Perhaps you can help him where others have failed." Something like sorrow flickered across his features. Since their mother's passing 2 years ago, the children have had difficulty adjusting. "The previous nanny," he paused. "She was not a good fit." Before she could inquire further, the study door burst open and a small whirlwind of energy barreled in. A girl of about 4 with her father's dark eyes and curly hair escaping from what had clearly been a carefully arranged hairstyle that morning. "Baba," Hassan said, "the new nanny is here. Is this her? Do you speak Arabic? Do you know how to make pancakes? The last nanny didn't make good pancakes." The questions tumbled out in rapid succession as the little girl stared up at Amihan with frank curiosity. "Layla," Sheikh Falah said, his tone gentle but firm. "What have I told you about knocking before entering my study?" The child's expression turned contrite. "Sorry, Baba." She turned to Amihan and executed a small, formal curtsy that seemed both rehearsed and adorable. "I am Layla Al-Zabi. Welcome to our home, Miss Amihan," she supplied with a smile, kneeling down to the child's level. "But you can call me Ami if that's easier. And no, I don't speak much Arabic yet, but perhaps you can teach me? And yes, I make very good pancakes." Layla's face lit up, but before she could respond, 2 more children appeared at the doorway. A solemn-faced boy of 9 and a tall, thin girl of 12 who regarded Amihan with wary assessment. Karim, Zara, come meet Miss Reyes, Sheikh Falah instructed. Karim stepped forward first, extending his hand with practiced formality. Welcome, Miss Reyes. Karim loves science and building things, Layla announced. But he doesn't like reading because the letters get all mixed up. Shut up, Layla, Karim muttered, ears reddening. Amihan shook his hand, noting the way his eyes didn't quite meet hers. I'm very pleased to meet you, Karim. Perhaps we can find books about science and building things that might be more interesting. His eyes flickered up briefly, a hint of hope before the guard returned. Zara remained at the threshold, arms crossed. I don't need a nanny. I'm almost 13. Zara. Sheikh Falah's voice carried a note of warning. It's all right, Amihan said. I understand. When I was your age, I felt the same way. She addressed Zara directly. I'm not here to treat you like a child. Perhaps we can be friends instead? I could use someone to help me understand Dubai. Something shifted in Zara's expression. Not acceptance, but perhaps a willingness to withhold judgment temporarily. Children, show Miss Reyes to her room and then give her some time to rest before dinner, Sheikh Falah instructed. We can continue our discussion tomorrow, Miss Reyes, after you've settled in. As she followed the children from the study, Amihan caught a glimpse of a photograph on the Sheikh's desk. A beautiful blonde woman with Zara's high cheekbones and Layla's smile, captured midlaugh on what appeared to be a sailboat. Catherine Alabama Zaabi, whose absence still clearly haunted this household. The first weeks passed in a blur of adjustment. Amihan quickly learned the household routines. Breakfast at 7 a.m., after which Hassan drove the older children to their international school. Mornings with Layla focused on play-based learning. Afternoons helping Karim and Zara with homework. Evenings spent preparing the children for bed, while Sheikh Falah often worked late. The staff hierarchy became apparent as well. Al-Zabi managed the household with military precision. Below her were the housekeepers, kitchen staff, gardeners, and security personnel. Amihan occupied an unusual position. Technically staff, yet treated differently due to her direct responsibility for the children. The Sheikh values education highly, Al-Zabi explained one evening as they shared tea in the staff kitchen. His late wife was a Cambridge graduate. That's why you have privileges others don't. Private quarters, meals with the family, use of the family pool. The other staff. Amihan began hesitantly. Do they resent me for it? Al-Zabi shrugged. Some might. Most understand. Just don't forget where you come from. Amihan. No matter what privileges you're given here, to them we're all just foreign workers. It was a sobering reminder that despite the luxury surrounding her, she remained fundamentally vulnerable. A guest worker whose presence in the country depended entirely on her employer's goodwill. Strange things occasionally caught Amihan's attention. Secured areas of the compound where staff were prohibited. Late-night meetings in Sheikh Falah's study with men in expensive suits speaking in hushed tones. Mysterious phone calls that ended when she entered rooms. She dismissed these observations as the natural privacy boundaries of a wealthy businessman. More concerning were the moments when she'd catch Zara staring at the ocean, a haunted expression on her young face. Your mother's accident, Amihan ventured one afternoon as they watched Layla playing in the sand. It happened at sea? Zara nodded, her eyes never leaving the horizon. They were sailing. Mom loved sailing. There was a storm. Dad survived. She didn't. The girl's tone was flat, emotionless. Yet Amihan sensed turbulent waters beneath the surface. Grief? Yes, but something else too. Something that felt almost like doubt. With Karim, progress came slowly but steadily. Amihan recognized the signs of dyslexia and introduced techniques that helped letters stay in place. When he successfully read his first full page without mistake, he looked up at her with such naked gratitude that she felt her heart contract. But it was little Layla who attached herself to Amihan most completely, following her like a shadow, insisting on bedtime stories and morning cuddles. You smell like my mom, the child confided one night, nestled against Amihan's side. Not exactly the same, but good. Safe. One evening, as Amihan tucked Layla in, the child asked drowsily, Ami, are you going to be my new mama? The question caught her off guard. No, sweetheart. I'm your nanny. Your mama will always be your mama, even though she's gone. But you could stay forever, Layla persisted. Baba smiles more since you came. Before you, he was always sad or angry. Before Amihan could respond, a shadow fell across the doorway. Sheikh Falah stood there, his expression unreadable. Bedtime, Layla, he said quietly. Miss Reyes, may I speak with you? In the hallway he sighed deeply. I apologize for my daughter's presumption. There's no need, Amihan assured him. Children process grief in their own way. Still, I don't want her to form unrealistic attachments. His gaze met hers directly. The children are becoming quite fond of you. I hope you'll consider staying beyond your initial contract. The question felt weighted, though with what Amihan couldn't quite discern. What she did know was that despite the lingering strangeness, despite the occasional unease that pricked at her consciousness, she had grown to care deeply for these 3 children. I'd be happy to discuss extending my stay, she answered carefully. The children are remarkable. You should be proud. For just a moment, his professional reserve cracked, revealing raw grief beneath. Their mother would have been proud. I'm merely trying not to fail them entirely. It was the most personal thing he'd ever said to her, a glimpse behind the controlled exterior. Before she could respond, the moment passed, his composure restored. Good night, Miss Reyes. As she returned to her room that night, Amihan paused on her small balcony, looking out over the glittering Dubai skyline. The city seemed a perfect metaphor for her situation. Dazzling on the surface, built on foundations she couldn't see, with depths and complexities she was only beginning to perceive. She had no way of knowing then that the most dangerous currents lay ahead, or that in less than 2 years, she would be dead on a bathroom floor, her final act one of both justice and sacrifice. By the 3-month mark, Amihan had become essential to the Al-Zabi household. The children's routines ran with newfound smoothness. Kareem's reading had improved dramatically. Zara had reluctantly begun to confide in her, and little Layla blossomed under her attention. Even Sheikh Falah, initially formal and reserved, had begun to acknowledge her impact. The children's teachers have noticed remarkable improvement, he mentioned one evening, finding Amihan in the family library organizing books for Kareem's reading practice. Particularly Kareem. His science teacher says he volunteered to read aloud in class yesterday. Amihan smiled, arranging colorful bookmarks beside the carefully selected texts. He needed the right materials and approach. His mind works differently but brilliantly. Like his mother, Falah said softly, almost to himself. He ran his fingers along a shelf of leather-bound classics. Catherine was dyslexic as well. She struggled terribly at school until a teacher recognized the issue. These moments, glimpses into the man behind the businessman, had become more frequent. What began as brief exchanges about the children's progress evolved into longer conversations after the children were asleep, often in the library or on the terrace overlooking the Arabian Gulf. One night, finding her reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez, he'd paused. You enjoy magical realism? I taught it to my students in Manila, she admitted. Even 4th graders can appreciate the beauty of magical thinking in a harsh reality. Something in her words seemed to resonate with him. That night, they spoke for hours about literature, education philosophies, and the power of stories to shape young minds. Amihan discovered that beneath Sheikh Falah's reserved exterior lay a thoughtful, educated man whose worldview had been shaped by both traditional Emirati values and Western education. These conversations revealed more about the Al-Zabi empire as well. What she had initially understood as a shipping business proved vastly more complex. A conglomerate spanning logistics, real estate, technology investments, and trading operations across 3 continents. My father built the foundation with traditional cargo shipping, he explained one evening. I expanded into digital logistics and supply chain technology. My younger brother handles special acquisitions and particular client relationships. The slight hesitation when mentioning his brother struck Amihan as curious, but she didn't press. Staff gossip had mentioned this brother, Ghanim, who spent most of his time in London handling the company's European operations. Luzviminda had described him as the flashy one, with a knowing look that suggested there was more to the story. Amihan would soon discover exactly what that meant. The day Ghanim Al-Zabi arrived coincided with Layla's 5th birthday celebration. Amihan was helping the little girl into her party dress when a commotion of excited voices echoed from the main entrance. "Uncle Ghanim!" Layla shrieked, abandoning the half-tied sash of her dress and bolting from the room. By the time Amihan caught up, Layla was already being swung in circles by a man whose resemblance to Sheikh Falah was unmistakable, yet whose energy couldn't have been more different. Where Falah moved with measured purpose, Ghanim radiated charisma and spontaneity. His traditional kandura was impeccably tailored, accessorized with a watch that probably cost more than Amihan's yearly teaching salary, and his English-accented Arabic carried across the marble foyer. "There's my princess. 5 years old? Impossible." He set Layla down and presented her with a small gift box. "From Harrods, just for you." Karim approached next for a high-five and shoulder clasp that appeared to be their ritual greeting. Even Zara, typically reserved, accepted her uncle's hug with genuine warmth. It was Falah who noticed Amihan standing back, observing. "Ghanim, this is Miss Reyes, the children's nanny and tutor." Ghanim turned, and Amihan felt the full force of his attention. A focused, evaluating gaze that seemed to catalog every detail about her in seconds. His smile transformed his face, creating dimples that matched Layla's. "The miracle worker I've heard so much about," he said, crossing to her and extending his hand. "My brother's emails have been full of praise for your work with the children, particularly with Karim's reading. You've accomplished what expensive British tutors could not." His handshake was firm, his palm warm against hers, the gesture Western rather than the more formal greeting typical in Emirati culture. The subtle scent of his cologne registered, something expensive and understated. "The children make my job easy," she replied, withdrawing her hand perhaps a moment later than was strictly professional. "They're exceptional." "Of course they are." He winked at Layla. "They're Al-Zabis." Throughout the birthday celebration that followed, a lavish affair with performers, a custom carousel installed temporarily in the garden, and gifts that made Amihan dizzy to contemplate, she found Ghanim watching her. Not in the evaluating way of an employer, but with undisguised interest that made her simultaneously uncomfortable and flattered. He was charming with everyone, joking with staff, discussing world events with Falah's business associates who attended, entertaining the children with stories of London. But repeatedly, his attention returned to her. When she organized the children's party games, he joined in with enthusiastic abandon. When she quietly redirected an overstimulated Karim away from the crowd, Ghanim noticed and later asked about her techniques. "You didn't just distract him," he observed. "You gave him purpose, asking him to count the gift bags." "Clever. Structure helps him regulate," she explained, surprised by his perception. As the party wound down and staff began clearing decorations, Falah found Amihan supervising Layla opening her mountain of gifts. "My brother requested you join us for dinner tonight," he said, his tone neutral. "The children will have their meal in the nursery with the other staff supervising." Something in his expression made her hesitate. "Is that appropriate, sir?" "Ghanim is interested in your educational methods," Falah replied carefully, "and it would be rude to refuse." Before she could respond, Ghanim appeared, now dressed in Western clothes, tailored slacks and a casual designer shirt that looked effortlessly elegant. "I insist you tell me more about your magical realism teaching techniques," he said, clearly having overheard her conversation with Falah days earlier. "Over dinner? I've brought an excellent Bordeaux that even my ascetic brother might appreciate." Later, Amihan would remember Luzviminda's warning glance as she changed into her nicest dress, still modest but more sophisticated than her working clothes. At the time, she dismissed it as unnecessary caution. This was a professional dinner with her employers, nothing more. Yet as the evening progressed through multiple courses of exquisite food, with Ghanim dominating the conversation with stories of Oxford, London society, and his travels, she couldn't help noticing the contrast between the brothers. Falah observed more than he spoke, his contributions thoughtful and measured. Ghanim performed. There was no other word for it, with dazzling wit and carefully deployed charm. "So, Miss Reyes Amihan, tell me what brought you from teaching to Dubai?" Ghanim prompted, refilling her wine glass despite her protest that she'd had enough. She gave the simple version: family responsibilities, financial pressures, the opportunity for better pay. What she didn't mention was how desperately her family had needed the money, or how limited her options had been in the Philippines. "Noble," Ghanim commented. "Family sacrifice. But surely a woman of your intelligence has ambitions beyond childcare." The question caught her off guard. "I love teaching. Working with these children isn't a step down. It's just more focused attention. And temporary," Falah interjected quietly. "Miss Reyes plans to return to Manila eventually to open her own school." Something flashed across Ghanim's face. Disappointment? Challenge? "Plans change," he said lightly. "Dubai has a way of revealing new possibilities." Later that night, as Falah excused himself to take a business call, Ghanim invited her to see the family's art collection in the West Wing Gallery. Professional curiosity, and perhaps the wine, overcame her hesitation. As they walked the gallery's length, Ghanim revealed an unexpected depth of knowledge about the pieces, explaining brushwork techniques of an Emirati artist, the historical context of a Chinese scroll, the controversy surrounding a contemporary installation. "You're surprised," he noted, amused. "Did you expect me to be just a playboy businessman?" "I didn't expect such knowledge of art history," she admitted. "Oxford," he shrugged. "Art history and business. Falah did engineering at MIT, all practical applications and measurable outcomes. I preferred studying beautiful things with intangible value." His gaze lingered on her face. "Things whose worth can't be calculated on spreadsheets." The comment hung between them, loaded with implication. Amihan took a deliberate step back. "It's late. I should check on the children before bed." "Of course," he acquiesced gracefully. "But I hope we'll continue our conversation while I'm here. It's refreshing to find someone in this household who appreciates beauty beyond its monetary value." Over the next weeks, Ghanim's presence transformed the household's atmosphere. Where routine and quiet order had reigned, spontaneity and energy now flourished. He took the children on impromptu adventures, desert safaris, yacht excursions, behind-the-scenes tours of Dubai's architectural wonders, always insisting Amihan join them to maintain the children's schedule. His attention arrived in subtle waves. Rare books left outside her door with notes identifying passages he thought she'd appreciate. Questions about Filipino culture and her hometown. Observations about the children that demonstrated genuine insight rather than superficial interest. Initially, Amihan maintained careful professional boundaries, acutely aware of the cultural and class chasms between them. She was a foreign worker. He was Emirati royalty. She depended on this job to support her family. His whims could destroy her livelihood. Beyond these practical concerns lay deeper cultural taboos. Emiratis rarely married outsiders, particularly not Christian Filipinas of modest background. When Luzvaminda noticed Ghanim's attention, she pulled Amihan aside. "Be careful, Anik. Men like him see women like us as temporary amusements, not equals." "It's not like that," Amihan protested. "He's just intellectual company while he's visiting." But even as she said it, she recognized the half-truth. Something dangerous was building, a connection that transcended the expected boundaries between employer and employee. The turning point came one evening in the garden. Amihan had established a small vegetable plot with Layla as a science project. She was kneeling in the soil, explaining germination to the fascinated child, when Ghanim appeared. "Layla, your father's looking for you," he said. "Something about choosing a movie for tonight." After the girl raced off, he remained, watching Amihan brush soil from her hands. "You've made this house a home again," he said quietly. "Before you came, it was a beautiful mausoleum. My brother buried himself in work. The children were like ghosts. Now there's life here." The sincerity in his voice disarmed her usual defenses. "They just needed consistency and attention." "You're wasted as a nanny," he said. echoing his earlier comment in the gallery. Someone with your mind should be helping run a company, not just a household. When she laughed, he appeared genuinely confused. What's amusing about that? The idea that someone like me could step into your world, she said. A provincial teacher from Manila. Why not? Dubai was a fishing village a generation ago. Transformation is what we do best here. He stepped closer. Let me show you what's possible. The invitation hung between them, laden with promise and danger in equal measure. In that moment, watching the sunset paint the garden in gold, Amihan made a choice that would ultimately lead to her death, but also to justice for countless women whose names she didn't yet know. Perhaps I will, she said softly, accepting his outstretched hand. 6 weeks into Ghanim's extended business trip to Dubai, Amihan found herself living in two worlds. By day, she remained the devoted nanny, helping with homework, organizing activities, maintaining the routines that gave the children stability. By night, she increasingly became Ghanim's companion at private dinners, cultural events, and intimate conversations in the mansion's secluded corners. Sheikh Falah observed this developing relationship with unreadable eyes, neither approving nor forbidding it. Only once did he approach the subject, finding Amihan alone in the kitchen late one evening after Ghanim had taken a call and excused himself. My brother, he said carefully, has always wanted what isn't his. The statement hung between them, laden with warning. I'm not sure what you mean, Amihan replied, though she understood perfectly. Falah studied her face. I believe you do. Be careful, Miss Reyes. Ghanim's interests are temporary. Whether he meant to protect her or the family reputation remained unclear, but his words planted the first seed of caution in her mind. Other seeds soon followed. One evening, as Amihan and Ghanim shared dessert on the terrace, his phone rang with a distinctive tone. His entire demeanor changed, the charming raconteur instantly replaced by a sharp-eyed businessman. Excuse me, he said curtly. I need to take this. He moved to the far end of the terrace, speaking rapid Arabic in low tones. Amihan couldn't understand the words, but his body language conveyed tension and urgency. She caught only fragments. Damaged goods, replacement cost. Discretion is essential. When he returned, his easy charm was back in place, but something felt calculated now, a performance rather than genuine warmth. Business never sleeps, he smiled, refilling her wine glass. Now, where were we? Such interruptions became a pattern, calls at odd hours, hushed conversations in his study, sudden departures to inspect operations at various locations around Dubai. Each time he returned more attentive, as if compensating for the abrupt absences. More troubling were the staff changes. 3 Filipina housekeepers who had arrived just before Ghanim's return were suddenly transferred to other properties without goodbyes. When Amihan asked Al-Zabi about them, the house manager's expression closed. Best not to ask, she said quietly. Some staff are reassigned. It happens. But where did they go? Amihan pressed. Christina was from my province. She promised to give me letters for my family. Al-Zabi glanced around before leaning closer. Listen to me carefully. There are things in this household that aren't our business. For your own safety, don't ask about staff who leave suddenly. The warning chilled Amihan. But what could it mean? Labor exploitation was unfortunately common among foreign workers in the Gulf, but the Al-Zabi household paid well and provided good conditions. What was Al-Zabi so afraid of? Her answer came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Ghanim was preparing a business presentation for potential investors and had asked for Amihan's help with the English translation of some slides. The children were at school, and Sheikh Falah was in Singapore for meetings. My tablet has all the files, Ghanim explained, handing her the sleek device. The presentation folder should be on the home screen. I need to take this call, but please start organizing the slides. You have an excellent eye for detail. He stepped into the adjacent room, leaving Amihan with his unlocked tablet. She found the presentation folder easily enough and began reviewing the logistics slides, impressed by the sophisticated operation the Al-Zabi group had built. A notification popped up, an incoming email with the subject line, Inventory update. Manila shipment. Thinking it relevant to the presentation, she tapped it without thinking. The spreadsheet that opened froze her blood. Columns of names, all female, all Filipino, ages 18 to 24. Alongside physical descriptions, education levels, and acquisition costs. Next to each entry was a market value, many times higher than the acquisition price. Status codes marked each name: in processing, in transit, delivered, damaged. Photos accompanied some entries. Young women posed in revealing clothes against neutral backgrounds, expressions vacant or fearful. The most recent entries included 3 names Amihan recognized with horror: the transferred housekeepers. Her hands trembling, she quickly looked at other files in the email thread, finding shipping manifests with coded references to special cargo and premium packages alongside legitimate commercial goods. Routing documents showed paths from Manila, Jakarta, and Ho Chi Minh City through various ports to Dubai, then onward to locations across the Middle East and Europe. This wasn't a shipping company. It was human trafficking. Young women recruited with promises of legitimate employment, transported like cargo, sold like merchandise. And Ghanim wasn't just aware of it, he was managing it. Fingers moving frantically, she forwarded the emails to herself, then took screenshots of everything she could access. In the background, she could still hear Ghanim's voice on the phone, giving her precious minutes to gather evidence. A familiar name in the spreadsheet made her stomach lurch: Maria Santos from Cebu City, 19 years old. Amihan's cousin's daughter, who had excitedly messaged the family about a housekeeping job in Dubai 3 months ago. They hadn't heard from her since. Status: delivered. Client: Al-Masri. Price: $45,000. The room spun around her. How deep did this go? Was Falah involved? The entire business empire? Were the legitimate shipping operations just a cover for trafficking? She heard Ghanim ending his call and quickly closed the files, returning to the presentation slides. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain he would hear it when he returned. "Find everything all right?" he asked, casual and charming as ever. "Yes," she managed, her voice miraculously steady. "I've organized the first section. The logistics network is impressive. Built over generations." He smiled, taking the seat beside her, his cologne, once appealing, now nauseating. "My grandfather started with a single dhow. Now we move goods across 3 continents. Goods. Human beings reduced to inventory. I should check on Layla," she said, rising. "She wasn't feeling well this morning." "Always the devoted nanny," he teased, touching her arm. "Don't be long. I value your input on this presentation." She forced a smile and walked, not ran, from the room. In her private bathroom, she locked the door and vomited until her stomach was empty, then slid to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The man she'd begun to trust, perhaps even to love, was a monster trafficking women from her homeland. And she had accepted his gifts, his attention, his touch, all purchased with money from human suffering. The next 24 hours passed in a haze of horror and desperate calculation. Amihan moved through her duties mechanically, bathing Layla, helping Kareem with homework, preparing Zara's competition speech, all while her mind raced through increasingly terrifying realizations. If Ghanim discovered she knew, she would disappear like the housekeepers. If she went to the authorities, who would believe her against one of Dubai's prominent families? If she fled, what would happen to the children she'd grown to love? And what about Maria and the other women trapped in this nightmare? Sleep eluded her entirely as she weighed impossible options. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She wouldn't run. Not yet. Running would save only herself, leaving others to suffer. Instead, she would gather enough evidence to bring down the entire operation: names, locations, bank transactions, client lists. Everything needed to secure prosecutions and free the victims. And to do that, she needed to get closer to Ghanim, not pull away. The realization made her physically ill again, but she forced herself to think clinically. She had access few others could gain. She had his trust. She had the technical skills to document evidence. and she had the motivation of knowing her own cousin's daughter was among the victims. That morning, she dressed with particular care, applying subtle makeup and selecting the dress Ghanim had once complimented. When she encountered him in the breakfast room, she smiled warmly, asking about his presentation preparations. "I was hoping you could help me finish it this afternoon," he said, his eyes appreciative of her appearance. "You have an instinct for what works." "Of course," she replied, maintaining eye contact a moment longer than necessary. "I'd be happy to." The performance had begun, the most dangerous role of her life. Every smile, every touch, every shared confidence now calculated to gain access to information that might save dozens, perhaps hundreds of women. That afternoon, while helping with his presentation, she casually asked about the company's operations. "The shipping network fascinates me. How do you track everything across so many countries?" Ghanim, pleased by her interest, showed her the logistics dashboard on his computer, inadvertently revealing the tracking system used for both legitimate cargo and human shipments. "Each container has a unique identifier," he explained. "We can locate any shipment in real time." "Amazing," she murmured, memorizing the interface layout. "You must have warehouses everywhere." "Distribution centers in 12 countries, he confirmed proudly. "Our Dubai facility is the hub. Everything passes through there for quality control before final delivery." Quality control. The euphemism made her skin crawl, but she nodded with apparent fascination. Over the next 3 days, Amihan executed her plan methodically. She purchased a prepaid phone and created an encrypted email account accessible only through a VPN. She photographed documents when Ghanim left rooms momentarily, recorded conversations by leaving her phone running in her pocket, and noted patterns of operations from casual comments. Most crucially, she established dead drops of information, sending encrypted files to a journalist friend in Manila with instructions to publish everything if she didn't check in regularly. Each night, she added more evidence to this insurance policy. The moral weight of her deception crushed her spirit even as her resolve strengthened. By day, she taught children she loved. By evening, she smiled and conversed with the man who had destroyed countless lives. By night, she documented everything, building a case that might eventually bring justice. The emotional toll manifested physically: weight loss, sleeplessness, jumping at sudden sounds. Al-Zabi noticed, pulling her aside after catching her photographing documents in Ghanim's study. "Whatever you're doing," the older woman whispered, "stop now. You don't understand what these people are capable of." "I understand perfectly," Amihan replied, her voice hollow. "That's why I can't stop." Al-Zabi studied her face, then pressed something into her palm. A small USB drive. "Security camera footage from the warehouse. My nephew works there. If something happens to me..." The unfinished sentence confirmed Amihan's worst fears. Others knew but remained silent out of terror. How many staff members were unwilling accomplices, trapped by circumstance and fear? That night, reviewing the warehouse footage in her bathroom with the shower running to mask the sound, Amihan finally saw the full horror of the operation. Young women sedated, examined like livestock, locked in partitioned sections of the warehouse awaiting delivery. Among them, clearly visible despite poor video quality, was Maria, her cousin's daughter, being transferred to a vehicle with diplomatic plates. The footage broke something inside her. No more gathering evidence. No more waiting. She had enough to act, and every day of delay meant more women suffering. Tomorrow she would confront Ghanim, offering him one chance to end this willingly before she took everything to the authorities. She saved the files, updated her dead man's Switch email, and finally slept. The exhausted sleep of someone who had made peace with the possibility of her own death in pursuit of something greater. She had no way of knowing that Sheikh Falah had returned early from Singapore, that security had flagged her unauthorized access to Ghanim's files, or that the brothers were at that moment discussing her fate in measured tones that belied the deadly implications of their words. Morning light filtered through the palm fronds outside Amihan's window as she prepared for another day of deception. She laid out Layla's clothes while mentally cataloging her evidence. Dozens of trafficked women's names, destination locations, bank transactions, and the warehouse security footage that confirmed everything. Ami, can we have pancakes today? Layla called from her bed. Of course, sweetheart, Amihan replied, her voice betraying none of the dread coiled inside her. She helped the little girl dress and braided her hair. Routines that once brought joy now shadowed by the knowledge that this domesticity concealed monstrous operations. In the kitchen, she moved through breakfast preparation mechanically, her mind vigilant for threats. Sheikh Falah had returned from Singapore the previous evening, complicating her plans to confront Ghanim alone. You seem distracted, Ghanim observed, entering the kitchen as she flipped pancakes. He stepped behind her, hands on her waist, lips brushing her neck. Thinking about our dinner tonight, she fought her revulsion, leaning back against him instead. Just planning the children's schedule. Always the dedicated nanny, he murmured. Though I've been thinking. Perhaps it's time you considered a different position. Her spatula paused. What do you mean? The Dubai branch of our foundation needs a new educational coordinator. Better salary, travel opportunities, more flexibility for personal arrangements. His meaning was clear. He was offering to upgrade her from domestic servant to quasi-legitimate girlfriend, still dependent on him but with enhanced status. That's unexpected, she managed, turning to face him. What about the children? They adore you, but they don't need you quite as intensely now. Zara's nearly 13. Kareem's reading has improved dramatically, and Layla, well, she'll adjust. The casual cruelty of his assessment, that children who had lost their mother could simply adjust to losing another maternal figure, crystallized everything about Ghanim's character. People were interchangeable assets to be moved for maximum benefit. I'll need time to consider it, she said, forcing a smile. As he left, Amihan's phone buzzed with a message from Luzvaminda. Be careful. Security team reviewing access logs. Someone asking questions about you. The warning accelerated her timeline. She was running out of time. Throughout the day, Amihan moved through her duties while continuing her intelligence gathering, photographing a shipping schedule from Falah's desk, copying contacts from Ghanim's planner, recording conversations between the brothers. Pattern emerged that she'd missed earlier. While Ghanim managed operations, the strategic vision, the architecture of the entire trafficking network, clearly originated with Falah. References to the system and protocols established in 2018 all pointed to the elder brother, his reserved exterior concealing the true criminal mastermind. During an exchange she overheard while dusting outside Falah's study, the hierarchy became explicit. The Singapore expansion was my decision, Falah stated coldly. Your role is implementation, not strategy. Your strategy nearly got us exposed, Ghanim retorted. Using diplomatic channels was unnecessarily risky. It worked, didn't it? 43 units delivered without a single complication. Units, not women. Units. By mid-afternoon, Amihan had mapped a trafficking network spanning Southeast Asia, the Gulf states, and Europe, with the Al-Zabi operation at its center. The scope was staggering. Hundreds of women moved annually, millions in profits, political protection purchased at every level. The warehouse footage had revealed the final horror. The processing facility was on Al-Zabi property, less than 2 kilometers from where Amihan played with Layla in the garden. The same drivers who took the children to school transported young women to buyers. And Catherine's sailing accident? Amihan now suspected the British wife had discovered the truth and paid the ultimate price. Are you all right, Miss Reyes? Sheikh Falah's voice startled her as she supervised Kareem's homework. Yes, just tired, she replied, wondering if he could hear her heart pounding. Falah studied her with unsettling intensity. You've seemed distracted since my return. I trust everything is satisfactory with your position. Had he noticed her snooping? Did he suspect? Very satisfactory, she assured him. Though Ghanim mentioned something about a foundation position, something flickered in Falah's eyes, surprise, then calculation. Did he? How interesting. My brother often acts without consulting me on personnel matters. The territorial tension between the brothers might be useful, she realized. If she could exploit their rivalry, create confusion about her loyalties, she might gain precious time. "I would never consider leaving the children without discussing it with you first," she said, watching his reaction. Satisfaction replaced suspicion in his expression. "I appreciate your loyalty, Miss Reyes. Perhaps we should discuss your future role after my brother returns to London." The implication was clear. Falah saw her as his employee, not his brother's plaything. That evening, as she prepared for dinner with Ghanim, Amihan made final arrangements. She updated her dead man's switch, programming it to send evidence to authorities if she didn't enter a passcode every 12 hours. She wrote letters to her family and the children, explaining everything in terms they might someday understand. She sent an encrypted message to her journalist friend. "If you don't hear from me by tomorrow noon, publish everything. Notify Interpol. The children are innocent. Make that clear." The psychological strain had taken visible toll. Her face showed hollowed cheeks and shadowed eyes that makeup couldn't conceal. She had lost nearly 5 kilos in 10 days, her body physically rejecting the constant deception. Yet tonight's performance needed to be her most convincing. She selected a dress Ghanim had bought her and arranged her hair as he preferred. When Ghanim collected her for their private dinner on the yacht, his appreciation seemed genuine. "You look beautiful. I've arranged something special tonight." The yacht had been moved to a secluded cove, accessible only by the family's private launch. As they cruised away from Dubai's lights, Amihan fought rising panic. If something went wrong out here, there would be no witnesses, no help. The yacht itself was a floating palace, with a formal dining room set for two. Champagne chilled in a silver bucket. Soft music played. Flowers adorned every surface. As they dined on exquisite seafood prepared by a chef who discreetly vanished after serving, Ghanim outlined his vision. The foundation position as cover for their relationship, an apartment in Dubai Marina, travel to London and Paris, all the trappings of luxury without marriage. "You understand our worlds can't fully merge," he explained, as if offering a reasonable compromise. "But within certain parameters, I can give you a life most women only dream about." The irony wasn't lost on Amihan. He was offering her a gilded cage while trafficking Filipino women into literal imprisonment. "And if I wanted more?" she asked. "If I wanted to understand your business better? Be a true partner?" Something calculated flickered behind his charm. "What aspects interest you?" "The operation seems fascinating," she said, leaning forward. "The logistics, the global scale. I've always been good with details, with administration." His expression shifted, suspicion briefly surfacing. "There are aspects of international shipping that aren't suitable for someone with your sensibilities." "You mean the women?" she said quietly. The cabin went silent, the distant hum of engines suddenly deafening. "What women?" he asked, voice neutral. "The ones in the spreadsheets. The ones in the warehouse. The ones sold to men like merchandise." Her heart threatened to explode, but her voice remained steady. "Maria Santos from Cebu. My cousin's daughter." Ghanim's expression transformed, charm evaporating, revealing cold calculation beneath. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to gather evidence," she replied. "Long enough to ensure that evidence reaches authorities if anything happens to me." "You've been playing me." "As you played me," she countered. "The difference is, I know what you are now." "And what am I exactly?" "A trafficker, a slaver, a man who sells women." "No," he corrected with disturbing calm. "I'm a businessman who provides a service to wealthy clients. The merchandise is irrelevant. It could be diamonds, antiquities, or women. The system is what matters." "I want it stopped," she said. "The entire operation dismantled. The women freed. Or everything I've gathered goes to authorities worldwide." "What makes you think anyone would believe you over us? We have connections at every level of government. You're a nanny, easily discredited or disappeared. That's why the evidence is already secure," she stated. "Scheduled for automatic release unless I prevent it. Photos, videos, financial records, names, locations. Everything." Genuine concern crossed his features. My brother won't allow this. Your brother is implicated most of all, she countered. I have recordings confirming he designed the entire operation. Ghanim studied her with something approaching respect. You've been thorough. He moved to refill his glass, back turned. And what exactly do you hope to achieve? Even if you damaged our operation, there are dozens of others. The demand exists. Someone will fill it. I can stop yours, she replied. That's enough. He turned. What if I told you there's a way out for both of us? I'm listening. Help me take over from Falah, he proposed. The trafficking was his initiative, not mine. I prefer cleaner enterprises. With your evidence, I could force him out, restructure the business legitimately. The women could be released discreetly. The offer confirmed her suspicion of rivalry between the brothers. Ghanim would sacrifice Falah to save himself. And us? She asked, maintaining the pretense. We continue as planned. Your position at the foundation, the apartment, our arrangement. You'd have my protection. She appeared conflicted, buying seconds to assess her situation. The yacht was isolated, her evidence secure but useless if she didn't survive. She needed to return to shore, to safety. I need time, she said carefully, and proof of your sincerity. Of course, he smiled, the predator returning to charm mode. We'll start tomorrow. 4 tonight. He reached for her hand. Let's celebrate our new understanding. As he led her toward the master cabin, Amihan knew she had reached the point of no return. Tomorrow she would transmit her evidence and face the consequences. She had no way of knowing that in the mansion, Al-Zabi was already being interrogated by Falah's security team, or that the USB drive containing warehouse footage had been discovered during a search of her quarters. The countdown to her death had begun. The morning after their yacht dinner, Dubai awakened to rare autumn rain. Fine droplets that turned the air hazy and softened the harsh desert light. Amihan watched from her window as gardeners rushed to protect delicate blooms, the scent of wet earth rising from manicured lawns. It seemed fitting that her final act of courage would unfold on a day when nature itself defied the expected order. She had slept little, the yacht encounter with Ghanim replaying in her mind. His proposal to betray his brother was a transparent stalling tactic, but it had given her what she needed: safe passage back to shore and one more day to finalize her evidence package. Now, dressed in her simple work clothes rather than the evening finery he preferred, she felt armored for battle in cotton and resolve. The mansion hummed with unusual activity. Staff moved with heightened tension. Conversations hushed when she approached, and security personnel appeared at posts normally unmanned. Either her investigation had been discovered, or something significant was happening within the operation. Either way, her window of opportunity was closing rapidly. She found Ghanim alone in his study mid-morning. Reviewing documents with such concentration, he didn't immediately notice her. The room, all leather and mahogany with views of the sea, had once impressed her with its sophisticated luxury. Now she saw only a criminal's command center. Amihan, he said, looking up with practiced charm that didn't reach his eyes. I was just about to send for you. I've been considering our discussion from last night. She closed the door behind her, heart hammering but voice steady. So have I. For a moment, they regarded each other like chess opponents, each assessing the other's potential moves, each hiding their true strategy behind careful expressions. I need to show you something, she said, removing her phone from her pocket. Before we discuss any arrangement. His eyes narrowed. What is it? She pulled up the footage from the warehouse. Young women sedated, examined like livestock, transferred between handlers. This is your business. The real Al-Zabi enterprise. Where did you get this? His voice sharpened, the charm evaporating. Does it matter? I have this and much more: financial records, client lists, transport schedules. Everything needed to dismantle the entire operation. Ghanim leaned back, reassessing her with cold calculation. You're taking an enormous risk coming to me directly. What exactly do you want? I want it stopped, she said simply. All of it. The trafficking, the exploitation, the slavery. And I want the women currently in your system released. A bark of laughter escaped him. Just like that? Dismantle a multi-million-dollar operation because a nanny finds it distasteful? You understand nothing about how this works. The clients, the protection arrangements, the dependencies. I understand perfectly, she countered. I understand that Maria Santos from Cebu, my cousin's daughter, was recruited with promises of legitimate work, then sold to a Saudi businessman for $45,000. I understand that the 3 housekeepers who transferred last month are now being held against their will. I understand that you and your brother treat human beings as inventory. She stepped closer to his desk, palms flat on its polished surface, finding strength she hadn't known she possessed. This ends now, or everything I've gathered goes to international authorities, media outlets, and human rights organizations simultaneously. Ghanim's expression shifted through several calculations before settling on something like respect mixed with wariness. You're either incredibly brave or suicidally foolish. I'm desperate, she corrected, which makes me dangerous. He stood, moving to the window, his reflection superimposed against the rain-blurred garden beyond. For several moments, he remained silent, shoulders tense beneath his perfectly tailored shirt. You don't understand what you're asking, he finally said, voice softer than she'd expected. This isn't just a side business we can shut down without consequences. There are powerful people involved. Government officials, royals, businessmen who could destroy us with a phone call. That's not my concern. He turned to face her. It should be. If these clients don't get what they've paid for from us, they'll simply find another supplier. Nothing changes except the Al-Zabi name is ruined and everyone connected to our family business suffers, including the innocent staff, the children you claim to love. The argument, so coldly pragmatic, so utterly devoid of moral foundation, stunned her momentarily. In his worldview, the traffic in human lives was simply market economics, with suppliers meeting demand. At least I won't be complicit, she replied. At least those women in your warehouse right now might have a chance. Something shifted in his expression, perhaps recognizing the immovability of her position, perhaps reassessing his approach. He returned to his desk, sitting heavily. What if? He began, then paused, seemingly struggling with internal conflict. What if I told you I've been trying to move the business away from this? That it was Falah's initiative, not mine. I'd say you're lying, she responded flatly. I have recordings of you discussing merchandise pricing. Of course I did, he snapped. It's the family business. But that doesn't mean I haven't tried to shift toward legitimate enterprises. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of genuine frustration. Technology investments, real estate development, shipping automation. I've been building alternative revenue streams for years. The vulnerability seemed authentic, catching her off guard. Was it possible there was still some human conscience buried beneath years of rationalization? Then help me end it, she pressed, softening her approach. Help me free these women. Whatever the consequences from clients, from your brother, we can face them together. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't fully read, calculation certainly, but also something that might have been regret in another man. It would require careful planning, he said slowly. Immediate shutdown would be catastrophic. Clients demanding refunds, inventory with nowhere to go, security protocols triggered. But a gradual transition. He seemed to be thinking aloud. The Singapore shipment could be the last. We could release current inventory through legitimate employment channels, using the foundation as cover. Hope flickered dangerously in her chest. You would do this? With conditions, he replied, leaning forward. Your evidence, all of it, secured where only you and I can access it. Insurance for both of us against my brother's retaliation. And you stay with me through the transition. I'll need someone I can trust. Trust. The word hung between them like a fragile thread. She knew better than to believe him entirely, yet the offer aligned with her observations of the brothers' rivalry. Ghanim had always wanted to emerge from Falah's shadow, to assert his own vision for the company. I need to see concrete action, she said carefully. Not just promises. Fair enough. He checked his watch. Falah has meetings until this afternoon. Let me show you something first. Proof I'm serious. He stood, extending his hand. It requires trust from both of us. Sheikh Falah bin Khalid Al-Zabi had built his reputation on patience and strategic thinking. Unlike his impulsive younger brother, he rarely acted without calculating multiple consequences, rarely spoke without weighing each word. It was this methodical nature that had transformed their father's shipping company into a global empire spanning legitimate and shadow economies. So when Ghanim burst into his private study without knocking, Falah's irritation was measured but palpable. "We have a situation," Ghanim announced without preamble, closing the door firmly behind him. Falah gestured for his brother to lower his voice, indicating the conference call on mute. "I'm in the middle of the Singapore negotiation. This takes precedence," Ghanim insisted. "The nanny knows everything." 2 words that instantly commanded Falah's full attention. He ended the call with practiced apologies, then turned to his brother, expression revealing nothing. "Explain. She has evidence, warehouse footage, financial records, client information. She's threatening to release everything to authorities unless we shut down the entire operation." Falah's fingers steepled beneath his chin as he processed this information. "How much does she actually know?" "Enough," Ghanim replied grimly. "She has footage from inside processing. Names, destinations, prices. She mentioned Maria Santos specifically, her cousin's daughter, apparently. And you confirmed our involvement?" Falah's voice remained dangerously calm. Ghanim shifted uncomfortably. She already knew. Denial would have been pointless. "I'm trying to contain the situation. Told her I wanted to help transition away from trafficking, that it was your initiative, not mine." A flicker of cold anger crossed Falah's face at his brother's instant betrayal, quickly replaced by pragmatic assessment. "Where is she now?" "Waiting in my private office. I told her I needed to gather documents proving my commitment to legitimate business." "And the evidence?" "Claims it's secured with automated release protocols if anything happens to her." Falah rose from his desk, moving to the window that overlooked the children playing in the garden despite the light rain. Their laughter carried faintly through the glass. For a long moment, he observed them in silence. "She's been good for them," he said finally. "The first stability they've had since Catherine." "This isn't about her childcare skills," Ghanim pressed impatiently. "This is about existential threat to the business." Falah turned, his expression hardened. "You think I don't understand that? One foreign worker with a smartphone threatening an operation that took years to perfect." He returned to his desk, pressing a discreet button beneath its edge. "The question is not whether she's a threat. She clearly is. The question is how to neutralize that threat while minimizing disruption." Within moments, Rashid, the head of security, entered silently. "The nanny's quarters," Falah instructed without preamble. "Search everything. I want all devices, storage media, documentation. And find Al-Zabi. I need to know who else might be involved." As Rashid departed, the brothers faced each other across the expanse of the desk. "We need to handle this carefully," Falah said. "The children are attached to her. A sudden disappearance would be problematic." "What are you suggesting?" "An unfortunate accident. Something plausible, something that wouldn't trigger suspicions." His gaze was clinical, detached. "Her medical records show a severe peanut allergy. Tragic. But these things happen." Ghanim processed this, nodding slowly. "Clean. But what about her evidence dead man switch? Find out the verification protocol. She must check in somehow to prevent release. We need that information before proceeding." "She won't give it willingly." Falah's expression hardened further. "Then be persuasive. You've managed to charm her this far. Finish the job." The security chief returned, holding a small USB drive. "Found in her quarters, sir. Footage from Warehouse B." Falah examined the drive without touching it. "And Al-Zabi? Being questioned now. Preliminary information suggests she provided some of the evidence. Her nephew works security at the warehouse." The brothers exchanged glances, the implications clear. The conspiracy extended beyond Amihan. "The timetable has accelerated," Falah stated. The nanny can't leave this property alive. Tomorrow morning, breakfast. You'll ensure she's there. And the children? Ghanim asked. We'll learn that life involves loss, Falah replied coldly. They survived their mother's death. They'll survive their nannies. The following morning dawned clear, the previous day's rain leaving everything washed clean and gleaming. Amihan woke early, having spent a restless night alternating between hope and suspicion. Ghanim's apparent willingness to help end the trafficking operation seemed too convenient, yet she had seen genuine conflict in his expression. More troubling was Luzvaminda's absence. The house manager hadn't returned to her quarters the previous night, her bed untouched. When Amihan discreetly asked other staff, she received only averted eyes and mumbled excuses. As she dressed, a text arrived from her journalist contact in Manila. Evidence received. Backup secure. Confirm status. She replied quickly, proceeding as planned. Will update by noon. Then deleted the exchange. Her dead man's switch was set. Her evidence was secured. Now she needed to survive long enough to see justice done. The breakfast room glowed with morning sunlight when she arrived with Layla, the little girl chattering about a school art project. Kareem and Zara were already seated, unusually subdued. Sheikh Falah presided at the head of the table, reading financial news on his tablet. Good morning, Amihan greeted them, helping Layla into her chair. Miss Reyes, Falah acknowledged with perfect politeness. I trust you slept well? Something in his tone raised immediate alarm. His eyes held knowledge they shouldn't possess. Very well, thank you, she lied, watching as a staff member poured tea for the adults. She noted with sudden clarity that her cup was slightly different from the others, a delicate bone china pattern rather than the usual service. I made your tea the way you like it, Falah commented casually. Extra honey. The trap revealed itself with crystalline clarity. They knew about her investigation. They had searched her room, perhaps found the USB drive. And now they were eliminating the threat she posed. Ghanim entered, impeccably dressed but tension visible in the set of his shoulders. His eyes met hers briefly, conveying nothing but professional courtesy. Children, Falah addressed his offspring. After breakfast, you'll be going with Hassan to visit your grandparents. A surprise weekend trip. Removing witnesses, Amihan realized, ensuring the children wouldn't be present for whatever came next. She lifted her teacup, pretending to sip while actually touching only her lips to the rim. The faint, almost imperceptible scent of peanut oil confirmed her suspicions. They knew about her severe allergy, documented in her employment medical records. Delicious, she murmured, setting the cup down. You're right. The honey makes all the difference. Falah smiled thinly. I'm glad you approve. Please eat. You seem to have lost weight recently. She forced herself to take small bites of toast, avoiding anything that might have been contaminated. Her mind raced through limited options. She couldn't run. Security would stop her before she reached the gate. She couldn't confront them directly, not with the children present. Layla tugged at her sleeve. Ami, can you help me finish my drawing before school? Of course, sweetheart, she replied, heartbreaking at what might be their final interaction. As breakfast concluded and the children were ushered away to prepare for their surprise trip, Amihan felt the noose tightening. Ghanim lingered, arranging to meet his brother in the study to discuss the Singapore matter. When the children had gone, Falah addressed her directly. More tea, Miss Reyes? I believe you've hardly touched yours. The pretense had ended. They were watching for symptoms, waiting for the poison to take effect. No, thank you, she replied evenly, meeting his gaze. I find I've suddenly lost my appetite. The betrayal came not with dramatic confrontation but with clinical precision. Amihan excused herself from the breakfast table with practiced composure, walking, not running, to her private bathroom. Only there did she allow panic to surface, frantically rinsing her mouth and calculating her next move. She hadn't swallowed the tea, but her lips tingled ominously where the liquid had touched them. Even minimal contact with peanut oil could trigger her severe allergy. Her EpiPen lay in her bedside drawer, but security would be watching her movements now. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ghanim. "Meet me in the East Garden. I can get you out." A trap, surely. Yet staying meant certain death. She retrieved her EpiPen and phone, then made a decision. If she was going to die, her evidence would not die with her. She activated the final protocol on her dead man's switch, changing the release timer from 12 hours to immediate. With trembling fingers, she typed, "Send all files now. They've poisoned me. Maria Santos, Warehouse B." The confirmation appeared seconds before her first symptoms. Throat tightening, skin flushing hot. She plunged the EpiPen into her thigh through her dress, gasping as epinephrine flooded her system. The bathroom door opened. Sheikh Falah stood there, expression coldly evaluative as he observed her distress. "You should have been more careful, Miss Reyes," he said quietly. "Allergies can be so unpredictable." "It's done," she managed, voice raspy as her airways began to constrict despite the epinephrine. "The evidence. It's already sending." Something flickered across his face. Calculation, not concern. "You're bluffing." She held up her phone, showing the confirmation message before her vision began to blur. "Justice," she whispered. "For Maria. For all of them." Falah lunged forward, grabbing the phone, but the damage was done. His composed facade cracked, revealing the ruthlessness beneath as he barked orders into a house phone, demanding his security team contain the situation. The epinephrine bought Amihan minutes, not salvation. As anaphylaxis progressed, she struggled for each breath. Her last coherent thoughts focused on the children she'd come to love and the women her death might save. Her final awareness was of Ghanim's voice, unexpectedly close, murmuring what might have been an apology or might have been a hallucination as darkness claimed her. Fatima Patel found Amihan's body at precisely 5:17 p.m. The official story assembled quickly. A tragic accident? Cross-contamination in the kitchen despite strict protocols regarding her allergy. The household's private doctor signed the death certificate without question. Anaphylactic shock due to peanut exposure. No investigation necessary for such an obvious medical emergency. Staff were instructed to pack her belongings for return to her family in the Philippines. The children, still away at their grandparents' home, would be told only upon their return. Proper procedures followed, proper appearances maintained. Behind closed doors, however, the Al-Zabi brothers faced crisis. Falah's security team worked frantically to trace and contain Amihan's evidence, but the dead man's switch had functioned exactly as designed. Files were already downloading to servers in multiple jurisdictions, encryption keys delivered to journalists and law enforcement agencies worldwide. "How could you let this happen?" Falah raged at his younger brother. "You were supposed to control her." "She was smarter than we anticipated," Ghanim replied, his customary charm replaced by grim pragmatism. "More resourceful, more committed." "She was a nanny," Falah spat, "a disposable employee." "She was a human being," Ghanim countered, surprising himself with the defiant response. "One who chose death over complicity." Something in his tone made Falah study him more carefully. "You admired her." "I respected her courage," Ghanim corrected. "A quality our family seems to have abandoned for profit." The unprecedented critique hung between them as reports flooded in of data breaches, media inquiries, and suspicious police movements near their warehouse facilities. 3 days later, the children returned home to devastating news. Their beloved Ami was gone. A tragic allergic reaction, unpreventable despite best efforts. Layla's wailing pierced the mansion's marble halls. Kareem retreated into silent shock. Zara alone seemed to process the loss differently, her eyes darting between her father and uncle with something approaching suspicion. "Did Ami eat peanuts by accident?" Layla asked between sobs, clutching the stuffed camel Amihan had given her for her birthday. "Yes, Habibti," Falah answered, embracing his youngest child with practiced paternal concern. "A terrible accident." Zara watched this performance with uncharacteristic intensity. "Ami was always careful about her allergy," she observed. "She never ate anything without checking first." Ghanim caught his niece's gaze, recognizing a perceptiveness beyond her years. "Sometimes even careful people make mistakes," he offered, the platitude hollow in his ears. For the public, the Al-Zabi family displayed appropriate grief. They arranged an elegant memorial service before sending Amihan's remains home to Manila with generous compensation to her family. Sheikh Falah made a substantial donation to allergy research in her name. Press releases highlighted her positive impact on the children and the family's deep regret at her passing. Meanwhile, their legal and security teams worked frantically to contain the spreading evidence. Initial inquiries from Dubai police were deflected with practiced influence. Donations to police foundations, calls to highly placed connections, reminders of the Al-Zabi contribution to the Emirates' prosperity. For a brief moment, it seemed the system that had protected them for years might hold. Then came the first headline in an international newspaper: UAE trafficking network exposed. Evidence implicates prominent business family. The dead woman's voice would not be silenced. 1 week after Amihan's death, Interpol received a comprehensive dossier documenting the Al-Zabi trafficking operation in meticulous detail. Simultaneously, human rights organizations received lists of victims with locations, diplomatic missions received evidence of their nationals being held against their will, and media outlets received warehouse footage too compelling to ignore. Most damning was an audio recording, Falah and Ghanim discussing Amihan's accident before it occurred, planning the peanut oil poisoning with clinical detachment. Dubai authorities, initially reluctant to pursue the case, found themselves under unprecedented international pressure. A midnight raid on warehouse discovered 17 women held in deplorable conditions, including 3 from the Philippines who confirmed everything in Amihan's evidence. The Al-Zabi empire began to crumble within days. Bank accounts were frozen. Travel restrictions were imposed. Business partners distanced themselves. The carefully constructed facade of legitimacy collapsed, revealing the criminal enterprise beneath. Falah attempted to flee on his private jet but was detained at the airport. Ghanim, in a move that shocked both family and authorities, surrendered voluntarily, offering testimony against his brother in exchange for consideration in his own case. "She died believing I might still have a conscience," he told investigators. "I'd like to prove her right, too late though it may be." International arrest warrants were issued for 12 Al-Zabi associates across 3 continents. Diplomatic cables, unsealed years later, would reveal the frantic negotiations between governments as the case threatened to expose high-ranking officials who had been clients of the trafficking operation. In the end, justice came not through political will but through public outrage. The evidence Amihan had gathered was irrefutable, the victims' testimonies too powerful to silence. A special tribunal was established to hear the case, resulting in unprecedented sentences for human trafficking in the region. Sheikh Falah bin Khalid Al-Zabi, architect of the operation, received 25 years imprisonment. His brother Ghanim, despite cooperation, received 12 years for his role in implementation. Their assets were seized, their business empire dismantled, their names synonymous with a criminal enterprise that had destroyed countless lives. 1 year after Amihan's death, a memorial garden opened in Manila, funded by restitution from the Al-Zabi assets. Simple and elegant, it featured a central plaque, "For Amihan Reyes, who sacrificed her life that others might be free." The garden's dedication ceremony brought together unlikely attendees, survivors of the trafficking network, members of Amihan's family, and 3 children from Dubai, accompanied by their maternal grandmother, Catherine's mother. Zara, now 14 and growing into a thoughtful young woman, laid flowers at the memorial. "She saved more lives than she knew," she told Amihan's mother, who had traveled from Cebu for the ceremony, "including ours, in a way." The children had been removed from their father's custody immediately following his arrest, initially placed with their paternal grandparents who had been ignorant of their son's criminal activities. When subsequent investigation revealed the suspicious circumstances of their mother's sailing accident, custody transferred to Catherine's family in England. "Did you know?" Amihan's mother asked gently. "About what your father was doing?" Zara shook her head. "Not exactly, but I knew something was wrong. The secrecy, the restricted areas, the staff who disappeared. Ami knew too. She tried to protect us from it while gathering evidence. Maria Santos stood nearby, one of 43 women rescued from the Al-Zabi operation. After months of recovery and counseling, she had become an advocate for trafficking survivors, working with international organizations to identify and dismantle similar networks. "Your daughter saved my life," she told Amihan's mother. "Not just mine, dozens of us. We were invisible until she made the world see us." The Al-Zabi case triggered profound changes throughout the Gulf region. New legislation strengthened protections for domestic workers. International monitoring programs were established for employment agencies recruiting from Southeast Asia. Most significantly, trafficking sentences were increased to reflect the severity of the crime. Luzviminda, who had been tortured during interrogation but survived to testify against her employers, established a support network for foreign workers in the UAE, helping them recognize warning signs of exploitation and access legal protection. For the children, reconciling their love for their father with his crimes proved an ongoing struggle. Karim, now 11, still maintained Falah had been framed. Layla, at 6, remembered him primarily through photographs and confused memories. Zara alone seemed to understand the complex truth, that her father had compartmentalized his life so completely he could be both a loving parent and a ruthless criminal. "Sometimes," she confided to her grandmother during a quiet moment at the memorial, "I wonder if Mom discovered what he was doing, if that's why she died." The older woman squeezed her hand. "Perhaps someday we'll know. For now, we honor your mother's memory by living with integrity," as Amihan did. As dusk fell over the memorial garden, Maria lit candles around the central plaque. Other survivors joined her, creating a circle of light that grew as darkness deepened. A fitting tribute to a woman who had chosen illumination over silence, justice over safety. In Dubai, the Al-Zabi mansion stood empty, its contents auctioned to provide restitution to victims. The children's wing, where Amihan had read bedtime stories and helped with homework, remained as she had left it. Books arranged for Karim's reading practice, Zara's competition speech carefully annotated, Layla's drawings taped to walls. On what would have been her 34th birthday, a package arrived at the Manila Memorial Garden. It contained Layla's stuffed camel, a letter from Zara, and a simple message. "She taught us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right despite your fear. We will never forget."